Hi guys! My name is Dr. Mari Chikwaidze, and today's session is about using computers to understand diseases and design novel medicines to cure them. It's a STEM masterclass where S stands for science, T for technology, E for engineering, and M for mathematics. But to answer our big question, we're not going to just use these four subjects separately. Instead, we will think of STEM as a single subject where boundaries between mathematics and natural sciences, like biology, chemistry and physics, are blurred, and computer technology is used to solving real-world important problems. In today's masterclass, we will apply STEM skills to gain an understanding of what happens in our bodies when we feel unwell, and to learn how computers can help us engineer medicinal drugs to cure some of the deadliest diseases. The purpose of this masterclass is to investigate what drugs are and how they work, to review the history of drug discovery from past to present days, to find out how mould juice turned into a life-saving antibacterial drug, to discover the importance of the shape of a disease-related biological molecule, to explore online tools used to draw beautiful pictures of biological molecules, to play a fun, interactive molecular matching game, to recognize that computational and experimental scientists work together to design medicinal drugs, to watch a movie of a molecular dance, and finally, to answer our big STEM question: can we use computers to understand diseases and design drugs? This is a hands-on masterclass, and to make most of it, I suggest to take notes and look things up as we go along. The links of the free interactive web-based tools used in this masterclass are provided in the description of the video. You will need to use these web-based tools to complete activities. Therefore, I suggest you open them now and have them ready. Feel free to pause the video should you get carried away with these tools. The best way to learn is through play. Before we start, let's make sure we understand the big word, molecule. So what is a molecule? A molecule is the smallest amount of substance that has all the properties of that substance. For instance, a water molecule is the smallest unit that is still water. How about drugs? Well, drugs are substances comprising of small natural or man-made molecules. We use drugs to diagnose, cure, treat or prevent diseases. Drugs can change behavior as well as promote well-being. Unfortunately, almost all drugs come with side effects. Prescription drugs are the third leading cause of death after heart disease and cancer in the United States and Europe. This is why designing drugs is really important, and this is what part of this masterclass is going to be about. But how do drugs work? Sometimes we get a disease when important molecules called proteins get damaged. Proteins are molecular machines that perform most of the tasks needed to keep us alive. To cure a disease, we must affect the protein associated with it, and that's precisely what drugs do. Drugs bind to proteins and modify their action by either turning them on or off. Proteins are typically large molecules which, if faulty, may cause a disease. Drugs are smaller molecules that bind to proteins and affect them. In this simple picture, we can see how binding of a drug molecule shown in purple to a disease-related protein shown in pink changes the shape of this protein. Change in shape affects the protein in such a way that could potentially cure a disease and make us feel better. In the 21st century, the first step in drug discovery is almost always carried out using computers. But this is not how it has always been. In the past, drugs used to either be extracted from traditional remedies, like herbal teas, or discovered by chance. Did you know that the world's first antibacterial drug, penicillin, was discovered by accident? Let's watch a short video to find out how that happened.
Having been brought up on a farm in Scotland, scientist Alexander Fleming wasn't afraid of getting his hands dirty, examining nasty bacteria like Staphylococcus aureus, which in humans, as well as horses, can cause death as well as vomiting and boils. One day, in 1928, Fleming came back from his holidays. He found some cultures of the Staphylococcus aureus bacteria, which he'd meant to throw away, had died. But instead of throwing them away, he stopped to think, what might have caused some of his sample to die and the rest to live? After a lot of time and effort in his lab, Fleming worked out that some of his sample had been contaminated by a particular fungus, which he then managed to grow himself. As an ex-soldier in World War I, he'd seen hundreds of soldiers die due to bacterial infection, and he figured that if the fungus could kill bacteria on his bench, it might also kill bacteria in wounded soldiers. And he was right. Having renamed his mould juice penicillin, it was ready for public consumption in time for the next war on D-Day. Penicillin has saved the lives of millions of people and horses.
Before we move on, let's recap what we've learned thus far. Pause the video to complete this true or false activity. I hope you answered the questions correctly. If not, you may want to replay the video before we move on. So what do we know about proteins other than that they're large biological molecules? Well, proteins are rather complex molecules found throughout the body. You can think of them as Legos of life. There are millions of different proteins, each of which has its own job to do. Some provide support to the body, while others help us fight off germs. Proteins themselves are made up of smaller Legos called amino acids. In turn, amino acids are made up of even smaller building blocks called atoms. Some amino acids are water lovers, others literally hate being near water. Some are small, others bulky. Some have positive electric charge, while others are negatively charged. Different proteins have different three-dimensional shapes, depending on the arrangement of amino acid Legos they comprise of. 3D shape of a protein determines its unique properties, which in turn determine its vital biological function. Proteins comprise thousands of atoms, yet scientists can determine the relative position of each atom from experiments. Protein Data Bank is an online database that contains a large amount of data about coordinates of each atom in large biomolecules. But looking at these coordinates of thousands of atoms can be too much for the human mind to grasp. Therefore, computer scientists produced so-called molecular visualization tools that strengthen the relationship between art and sciences. A picture is indeed worth 1,000 words. Historically, molecular shapes have always been an attractive choice for computer scientists for developing new computer graphics tools. Notice how mathematics helps us here. If we were to sketch a 3D shape, for instance a cube, on the right-hand side, we would need to know x, y, and z coordinates of each vertex, right? If computers can draw 3D shapes given x, y, and z coordinates, maybe they can also visualize proteins and help us understand diseases. Indeed, coordinates of atoms comprising proteins are determined using experimental tools and uploaded to the world's most extensive database, called Protein Data Bank. Let's explore Protein Data Bank, which stores over 160,000 molecular structures. Pause the video and go to the link of PDB provided in the description of this video. Search for penicillin binding protein by typing 2EX8 in the search window on the right. Click on Display Files and select PDB format to learn more about this protein. Can you find names of experimental scientists who discovered it? Scroll down to find X, Y, and Z coordinates of the first atom. Now click on the left-hand side where it says Structure to visualize the 3D shape of the penicillin binding protein. Examine the structure of this protein, zoom in and out, rotate it. Now look at its building blocks by hovering over and highlighting individual amino acids. Can you locate the penicillin bound to the protein? What else can you see that's neither drug nor protein? Now, if you want to challenge yourself, search for proteins involved in diseases of your own interest. If you can't think of anything, why not search for COVID-19? Now let's find out more about the shape and chemistry of the world's first antibiotic. To do this, all we need is molecular visualization tools and the most basic computer. So-called balls and sticks model of the drug is displayed on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side is a so-called space-filling model of penicillin molecule. It is often useful to use such graphical tools to switch between different representations. For example, balls and sticks model can be useful for looking at particular atoms comprising penicillin, whereas the space-filling model can give us an idea of how much space would a drug take up when bound to a protein. Computational chemists use tools like this to either build new drug molecules from scratch or modify the existing ones. It is just as easy and enjoyable as playing with Lego bricks. If you know how a disease-related protein looks like, you can build a novel drug that affects its shape and therefore will affect its function. Once the shape of a protein is known, we can think how to design a drug that fits in perfectly and affects the function of a protein. Such fit between a drug and a protein is often compared to the fit of a key to a specific lock. Drugs are complementary in shape and charge to the target protein with which they interact and therefore will bind to. Drugs fit into a cavity in the protein, just like a key fitting into a lock. Let's assume that the shapes at the top of the slide are drugs, whereas the shapes at the bottom are proteins. Pause the video and apply the concept of geometric complementarity discussed in the previous slide to match drugs with proteins. As discussed, shape of the molecule is important. This matching activity might remind you of the game of Tetris. But molecules are neither Lego bricks nor Tetris blocks. They are made of atoms and should therefore have an electric charge. Just like magnets have a north pole and a south pole, opposite charges, negative and positive, attract, and same charges, negative and negative, or positive and positive, repel each other. Let's assume the following charges of the molecules. How would this affect matching? Pause the video and have a think. You're right, positive and negative molecules will be attracted to each other, and molecules with the same charges will repel. Therefore, the binding will no longer be possible. Pause the video and think. If you were to redesign a drug, what could you do to optimize binding? Remember, introducing such modifications is one click away using computers. That's right, you did it. And that is precisely what computational chemists do too, when they design novel drugs based on the existing ones. Now let's learn about the fascinating world of biological molecules and their interactions by playing BioBlocks 2D. Pause the video and go to the link provided in the description. Scroll down the web page and click Try the online demo. Match molecules with different shapes and charges by switching, rotating, and swiping. Feel free to return to this free educational game and play more in your spare time. Can you improve your score and unlock more amazing facts about the biological molecules? I hope you enjoyed playing the game. Now let's summarize what is computational drug design. It is an inventive process of finding new medications based on the knowledge of disease-related proteins. Drugs are complementary in shape and charge to the target protein with which they interact and therefore will bind to. Computers can be used to modify drugs by introducing small changes and checking how they affect binding. As we have seen in this masterclass, computers are great for speeding up drug discovery process, but the methods discussed rely on the knowledge of a biological target, which comes from experiments. The structure of proteins is solved by experimentalists and uploaded to protein data bank. Computer simulations are often used to refine such experimental data before making it publicly available. It is the combined effort and collaboration between computational and experimental scientists that make the process of the drug design and development possible. One example of how computers complement experiments is their ability to simulate how proteins move around. Let's recap the key principle of protein-drug interaction, so-called lock and key model, according to which the drug molecule fits into a space of the protein like a key fitting into a lock. It turns out that this is not an accurate analogy at all, because both protein and drug molecules are highly flexible. A so-called hand-in-glove model considers the fact that both proteins and drug molecules wiggle around as they try to accommodate each other, like we wiggle our fingers when putting gloves on. Experimental tools often fail to detect molecular motion. Let's watch a computer-generated movie of a molecular dance to find out how computers can make biological molecules come alive. Before we finish, please pause the video, put away your class materials, and write or sketch everything you've learned about in this masterclass. Discuss: can we use computers to understand diseases and design drugs? Plan ahead. What else would you like to find out about this topic? Let's summarize what have we achieved in this masterclass. We investigated what drugs were and how they worked. We revealed the history of drug discovery from past to present days. We found out how mold juice turned into a life-saving antibiotic. We discovered the importance of the shape of a disease-related protein. We explored online tools used to draw beautiful pictures of biological molecules. We played a fun online game and learned about the fascinating world of biological molecules and their interactions. We recognized how computational drug design complements experimental sciences. We watched a computer-generated movie of a molecular dance. And finally, we answered our big STEM question: can we use computers to understand diseases and design drugs? Hopefully you enjoyed this masterclass. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for listening.